Hey, what do you say? Let's go watch The Average today.
That was terrible and brilliant. I'm astounded.
So yeah, let's just jump into it. Welcome to The Average Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Bryce.
I'm Tim.
And we're happy to see you here today.
Yeah,
Tim.
By the time you're hearing this should be episode 4 of our first season.
We're giving away what episode this is going to be.
Oh no. This should be episode 4 if everything goes according to plan.
Wow. I like how you're just putting that down there. Wow. Okay. So anyway, Tim, how are you doing?
So I'm doing great. All right, we're gonna dive in. This movie, we probably have a lot to discuss on this movie. Throwing shade left and right at studios. From Warner Brothers to Disney to.
Can I take the summary for this one?
You can take the summary.
I'm going to take the summary because there's backstory, and I want to try to get through this because you can get lost in this.
You can take the summary, and then I will read our original post for the people who are listening. Fair.
So in case anyone's confused so far, Tim wanted to go back and visit an old friend of ours. We decided to go
August 24th, 2021.
Oh my gosh, so long ago. So today, if you haven't noticed already, we're going to be talking about the Justice League Snyder Cut. A very divisive
Or
film.
just the only Justice League movie.
Okay, you can throw shade like that. That's fine too.
I told you shade is going to be flying.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. Again, forewarning, there will be spoilers in this movie. Because this has been out for a while, so if you haven't seen it yet, you can
full spoilers.
Yeah, full spoilers. We're not going to hold back in this one. It's been out for a while. Usually for newer movies, we will put a no spoiler tag depending on what happens. I know for Everything Everywhere All at Once, we decided to spoil some stuff just because for the sake of storytelling and what was going on. This one, full spoilers, no regrets. Let's just go ahead and get into this because this will be a tough one to get through.
Why don't you break down this plot for us, Bryce?
Okay. So we'll do a little different because this one is not just about the plot. This has more to do with the story and the controversies around it and how it came to be. So,
what happens when there are too many cooks in the kitchen?
I'm already getting sad thinking about this. So, basic outline of this movie. Zack Snyder's brought in by WB to create a new universe that rivals the Marvel universe. Our boy here comes out with a banger in Man of Steel. I know, controversial opinion. Then he comes out
with...
hold
on. I gotta get in here on that.
You can't even let me... It's okay.
No, because
go ahead. You're
Man
right.
of Steel was Zack Snyder and Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
Christopher Nolan was a major producer.
Movies.
Yes.
I get so lost.
Because his success from Dark Knight, he had a major hand in that movie. And I don't know how much in actual... He was a producer, which means he was behind some of it.
Yeah. He helped with it.
He definitely helped with it. Yeah.
So anyway.
But he was not interested in creating the universe.
Exactly. So he comes out with Man of Steel. Comes out with lukewarm reviews. A lot of divisiveness around the movie.
The best Superman movie ever.
I completely agree with you.
Actually, I'm lying. It's the second best Superman movie ever.
Anyway, that brings us to WB panicking like the cowards that they are. And next we have on the slate, his original plan, if I'm not mistaken, was to make a Man of Steel 2 and a solo Batman movie, which would then lead into the Batman versus Superman movie that we got next, which the studio rushed ahead because they were trying to get to the Justice League. So that movie comes out. The movie studio absolutely butchers the theatrical cut. It was awful. And to no one's surprise, the movie absolutely bombs. I hated it. I thought it was a terrible movie.
Until years later, I caught up with Bryce and I said, no. You have to watch the extended cut. You have to watch the director's cut.
And I pushed back for the longest time until I finally gave in, sat down, and it is... I'm not going to get into it too much. It is a phenomenal movie.
It's one of my favorite superhero movies.
Yeah, again, super divisive, I get it, but I feel like if you watch it, you will have a different opinion than you did from the theatrical cut. So, before we get stuck on that phenomenal movie, in our opinion, after that, because it failed at the box office, they did not release the ultimate cut in theaters. The main theatrical cut of the movie was what kind of led to very tense times at WB. So he's in the middle.
Because they made the theatrical cut, they were trying to stick for like a 2 hour and 15 minute window. Yeah. 2 hour, 30 minute window.
And a lot of
the director's cut is almost 3 hours long, I want to say.
Yeah. With a lot more details that definitely should have been in the movie. So anyway, he moves in to start production on Justice League. Tragically, his daughter passes away from suicide, and he steps away from the movie, as any parent would. It totally makes sense. And
Having filmed almost 90%.
yeah, the movie was very close to finish, basically, at that point. And so WB looks to bring in Joss Whedon, who made the original Avengers, which is what they were going for in the first place, to finish up the movie and basically tear it apart and make it what WB wants it to be. And what do we get with it is just a mess of a movie, and we'll just kind of leave it at that because I know Tim's going to say some stuff, and let's just keep it as it's just awful.
It's unwatchable.
Yes. So that comes out, it bombs, it's terrible. WB just loses it. And so we head into a time where they start focusing more on solo movies. Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Shazam, all of them.
Three, well, with the exception of Wonder Woman 1984.
Oh, that was later on.
I enjoyed that movie. It was not the first movie, but I enjoyed it. But like Wonder Woman is fantastic.
Yeah, gets great reviews.
Aquaman is one of my favorite DC movies because it is a 1970s comic book brought to the big screen. It is cheese factor cranked up to 3,000 and wholly embracing it.
What Tim tries to say is that it was their highest grossing movie at the time. So it brought in tons of $1 billion. James Wan directed it. Phenomenal movie.
The first action scene is one cut. Like, there's no cut scenes. It's beautiful.
Anyway, all those movies come out. They get some money out of that. It's great. So there was something that started to rumble in the online hemisphere. Talks of another cut, the Snyder Cut of Justice League, starts to pick up steam. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because we all know what happens next. Hashtags, I don't want to say boycotts because it's not really a boycott, but they're just saying like, hey, let's get the Snyder Cut out here. Snyder even gets on Twitter. He starts saying like, yeah, there's some Snyder stuff. He releases some scripts. It's finished. He releases some pictures. Like, it's everything. And
I think it was Ray Fisher who is next on board because Ray Fisher was very vocal about not being happy.
I'm already taking too long on this. But anyway, all the actors come out on top of that. They're like, release the Snyder Cut, release the Snyder Cut. And to everyone's surprise,
Ben Affleck, who is noticeably silent on Instagram at all other times,
yes,
joined.
All that to say, Snyder Cut comes out. It's going to come out. It's amazing. And we get the Snyder Cut. It gets released to HBO Max as a 4-hour epic movie. And I say that in the sense that it is literally a 4-hour epic. That is all you can describe it as, whether you think it's good or not. And that's kind of where we come today, where
the reviews on this movie are still terribly mixed, and I'm sure we will get into that in our own scoring because I believe I know why those reviews are terribly mixed. Disney owns half of the movie reviewers on Rotten Tomatoes. Just trace who owns their magazine.
But when it first came out, everyone was enjoying it. It got solid like 7s and 8s. It was a well-respected movie.
It's still above reviewers. I think Metacritic or like it's ranked one of the highest DC movies ever.
Yes. So we spent a lot of time on that. That was just, there was a lot of background to this movie. We're going to try to get through this because it is a 4-hour movie, but we're going to try to keep this as concise as possible because we could spend all day talking about this and we're not going to do that and subject you
very
people
much
to
so.
that. So let's just go ahead, jump right into it. Tim, why don't you kick us off?
Okay, story and plot.
Yes.
All right, the story being a comic book movie, I gave it a 5 out of 5. And not just for the basic storyline of, being from outer space comes and heroes have to unite to protect us. That's nothing new. Okay, that on its own, maybe 3.5, 4. All right, but the story here was so clearly thought out in prior movies that it goes above and beyond. So I had to give it a 5 out of 5. For the little moments, the Snyder Cut takes Cyborg and Flash, who were almost entirely cut from the theatrical release.
It's a shame.
Yes.
Shame on WB.
And the way they intertwine on rewatch with this movie, you realize that there is no way this movie set up a victory without any one of these characters. And the way you can do that with a speedster, a literal cyborg, a superhuman, a man with too much money, and a goddess, and then a basically descendant of ancient beings in Aquaman, like to make every one of them seem pivotal to the ending through your little scenes throughout the movie is an incredible story element. From the story elements from Cyborg being injured to using the alien technology to heal him, and that's how he connects to the end, or the Flash basically being a nobody and his dad believing he's a nobody and encouraging him like, you need to do something with your life, to at the end of this movie having realized that he did something with his life. Like, there's so much in this story that if you are not paying attention, you're gonna miss it. And like, those little story elements to me are what elevate it above an alien threatening the human race. Like, there's a lot of depth in here. And then
we just heard a bump or something, and we were just looking around like, where did that even come
from? I swear I heard a footstep above me, but this is a one-story house.
I don't even know where that came from. Anyway.
It's not even Christmas.
I feel like that sounds right.
Well, and that also leads back to like, the subtitle to Batman vs Superman was, you remember?
Are we talking about the Dawn of Justice?
Dawn of Justice.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Because there are plot threads laid down in that movie, especially the director's cut of that movie.
Yes.
That are picked up in this movie. And that's part of the problem people had with that movie to begin with, was that like, this makes no sense. Well, maybe if you had the patience to wait 2 years and watch the Justice League movie,
don't put
since
that on
Dawn
the
of
viewers.
Justice.
Okay,
it's not on the viewers, the reviewer.
I was one of those viewers.
Okay.
Don't do that.
But it was clearly, Dawn of Justice implied that this was at least a prequel, if not part one, of a Justice League trilogy. So, like, there are story threads laid in Batman vs Superman that are picked up on this movie and brought to fruition. And this story is, honestly, I think it's super well thought out.
Okay. Yeah.
If you want plot holes, throw them at me, because I want to know what your plot hole for this movie was.
Why are you so hostile? Jeez.
I'm not trying to be hostile. I'm being genuine because
no, I know.
I am a DC fan. I think the characters are better than Marvel, even though...
Oh, yeah. It's not even close, in my opinion.
Even though Marvel has traditionally had better films, that you can't argue that. Marvel lately has...
I would go as far to say that DC has had better films long-term than Marvel, because Marvel hasn't really picked up steam. Like, Spider-Man was the first... I mean, Blade, you could say
by
Blade,
Sony,
but
Blade.
Yeah,
there are some really
Marvel
sketchy
characters,
Marvel
but they were made by not Marvel Studios.
Yes.
But you could argue that some of the non-Marvel movies are way better than some of the Marvel movies that we've gotten. Which well, maybe that's another discussion for another time.
Specifically Spider-Man, but
yes,
otherwise.
Exactly. So I gave mine a 4 out of 5 for the story. I agree with him for the most part. The only reason I really dock it was mostly just because, let's just kind of face facts. It's a 4-hour movie. This is not for everyone. Unless you're a superhero fan and you like these characters and like you're invested in the Snyderverse as a whole, I don't feel like this movie is absolutely for everyone. Like, I was able to get my wife to watch it. All these movies, like Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, and Justice League.
Didn't we watch it with our wives together?
After we watched it together,
neither one of them enjoyed it.
Yeah, when it came out first, we watched it the day it came out. But then afterwards, like, we were able to convince our wives to try it out, and for the most part, like, they enjoyed some part. My wife at least enjoyed some parts of it, but
Bailey hated it.
Again, I will point back to, this is a 4-hour movie. And you can definitely tell that one half of a movie is absolutely for just character and setting the stage. The second half is the cause and effect of this story and whatnot. It's not perfect. I don't think it was meant to be perfect. Snyder is not a perfect director at the end of the day, and I'm okay admitting that. As much as I love his movies, I think he has flaws when it comes to storytelling at time, but I will point to this throughout the entire episode, probably. The fact that he could take a 4-hour movie like this, and the fact that the story just kind of, like you say, it's cohesive. There are a lot of plot holes in this movie. There's a couple times where you question, like, oh, that doesn't really make a lot of sense, and why that happens the way it does. But
those moments to me are... Like,
you can look past them.
They fall under like the realm of, it's a comic book movie.
Yeah, and we'll point back to that probably the entire episode too. It's like, it's a comic book movie. Like, I can suspend belief But the fact that it's a 4-hour comic book movie, something I don't think we were ever going to see ever.
It's one of a kind.
Like, it's one of a kind. And I think the fact that it's a 4-hour movie that handles itself the way it does story-wise, you don't really miss a lot of beats here. It kind of just flies by, and it makes sense.
It's 4 hours, but honestly, if you are paying attention, and truly you should have done your homework, you need to at least have seen Man of Steel and Batman
you're gonna
vs.
have
Superman.
to watch all these movies to understand the full story. And
if you get that
context,
you are not. I was not bored one moment on my first view.
Yeah, me neither. I've never been bored watching this movie.
No.
And I think that says a lot to the story and how it moves things along at a pace that is reasonable for 4 hours.
And makes sense. Yeah.
Yep. So moving on to the next one, characters. I gave mine a 4 out of 5.
So I gave mine a 5 out of 5.
All right, I'll start us off.
Yep.
I really struggled with this one because I was leaning to a 3 out of 5 with this one.
We watched different movies.
We did not watch different movies. We just have different opinions. Anyway, I was leaning.
I'm rolling my eyes so hard right now.
Yeah, I was leaning towards 3 out of 5 at first, but I was sitting there. I was just this was the one I struggled with, and I don't really know. I had trouble like pinning exactly why I moved it to a 4 out of 5 because I think it's totally reasonable to say it's fair to say this is 3 out of 5. But the reason I moved it to a 4 out of 5 was mostly just because I like these characters a lot. Like they all act exactly how they should act, as who these personalities are, how Snyder created them and wrote them. Not him specifically, but like the writers, like they fall exactly in line with how they should be as characters.
Well, and that is an important point. The way they were written for this story.
Yes.
Because they do differ from their comic book origins in many cases.
Oh, yeah.
But they fit this story that is being told.
Yeah, they do exactly what you think they would do as those characters. I think they're absolutely likable. They all have their quirky little personalities that stick out and like set them apart from each other. And again, probably get into another stuff, but watching them interact with each other feels natural. It feels like this is the Justice League. Like, until we get another one at some point, which Lord knows we probably will, this is the Justice League, and it feels like it. And I would be content with this being the Justice League that I got to see. I'm fine with it. The characters were great. Again, I could totally see it being a 3 because you could make the argument that it is a 3, but if you take the context for the full story and knowing these characters from Man of Steel, Batman versus Superman, and how they all come together, knowing their arcs, it's hard to not give it a 4. I just love them. Anyway, 5 out of 5 for you. Go.
Yeah, pretty similar. 5, except I have to give it a 5 for some of the character arc that was cut from the theatrical version, but not
of Batman versus Superman.
No, of Justice League.
Oh, you're talking about
like
Joss Whedon.
Cyborg.
Oh, dude, yeah.
Cyborg and the Flash have tremendous.
Butchered.
Yes, they were butchered from the theatrical cut. The Flash is an absolute joke in the theatrical cut compared to this movie.
And I mean, like, his jokes just get old after a while.
What's that, Rush? Dostoevsky? Like, it's awful.
Shut up. Don't even bring that up. Ugh.
Okay, but like the story arc, with the exception of Diana, she's really the only one who doesn't have. For those of you who don't know,
the weakest one.
Diana is Wonder Woman.
Yeah.
Diana, she's set up in Batman vs Superman kind of as a reluctant hero, and
kind
then
of wedged in there a little bit.
Yeah, a little wedged in there. That movie's definitely flawed.
Totally.
But it lays the foundation for what happens. And then in this movie, like, she's established, they know who she is.
Yeah.
And the bigger threat is on its way. And the first people attacked in this movie are Diana's people.
Yeah.
And that's really what like hooks her in. They send a message to Diana.
Yeah.
Diana knows this is serious. She's kind of really one note the whole time. Her people have been attacked. She's in. But where this gets the 5 out of 5 for me is Flash, who's like just a nobody. He's just chilling. His dad's in prison. He's trying to get his criminal justice degree.
He has such an awesome story.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like, really attached to his story when
Bruce comes to him. The whole
What are you thinking of?
what's the actor's name?
What's the actor's name? Oh, yeah. We don't speak of him.
Yeah, like
disgusting human.
Let's put
Ezra Miller.
Let's put Ezra Miller to the side for this.
Put aside the questionable acts this man has.
Yeah, he's not doing great. But let's blame it on Warner Brothers.
Right.
We're talking about the character of the Flash. And he's really just a nobody, and Bruce picks up that like he's got this ability and brings him in on the team, and he's like, yeah, I need friends. He's got nobody. And there's a scene early on where he's talking to his dad, and his dad's like, do something with your life.
I don't care what anyone says, that dad had an amazing performance for the few scenes he was in.
Yes.
It's emotional every time I watch those scenes.
And for everything else, there's MasterCard. That's the guy.
Thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, that's the same guy. But also, his dad's like begging him to do something with his life. Quit waiting. Quit sitting around.
Yep, exactly.
Do something. And by the end of this movie, like without Flash, I already said, without any of these characters, this is not a successful film.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure we'll get into the Flash.
We'll get into way more.
The Flash at the end of this movie has one of the most powerful scenes of any superhero film I have ever seen.
And before we move on, just real quick, we don't have to go too much into it. I don't think we need to. Steppenwolf, way better than the Josh Whedon. Not even
that's the other character I was going to point out.
Even though he is a very basic white bread villain, he is like threatening
but he's not a basic white bread villain. I'll counter that when you're done.
Okay, fair enough. But I don't want to spend too much time on it because I think it's easy to say like, yeah, he's way better. But every time he's on screen, he is a threat. He absolutely outpowers every single person that he's going up against.
Destroys those Amazons.
Oh my gosh, that opening gives me goosebumps still. It's just like that man is tearing. It is when he's throwing horses around.
Yes, he grabs like 4 horses by the ropes and just throws them over his shoulder.
Like his arm. Like I don't want to get too deep into it. Like he's just amazing. I love watching him do what he does.
Okay, but I also want to bring him up in character. He was one of the ones that I wanted to talk about because in the other movie, he was like a cartoon character of this. It was awful.
Oh my gosh.
It was so awful.
Bad.
In this, he immediately steps in with the Amazons. The Amazons have this amazing, like, is it cheesy? Yes. Are we watching a comic book movie? Also, yes. But they have this moment where he says something about smelling Amazon fear or whatever.
Oh, wait. Save that for a script because I was going to bring that up too. We'll get to the script.
Because it's cheesy?
No, wait for the script. We'll get to the script.
Okay, but what I'm talking about is like the Amazons have this amazing moment where they swarm him. All right, and he's like barely held back at all, just destroying them. We already talked about like this same scene. He flips like 4 horses over his shoulder in one time. Good. It's intimidating AF. It's incredible. But then there are other scenes where he's talking to Darkseid later. And he's on his knees because he has messed up previously. He's on Darkseid's bad side. And he finally has this moment to earn Darkseid's favor. And you see tears in his eyes.
Or maybe not tears, but just you see in his eyes.
Like big puppy dog. Like,
yeah. Like it's more than he deserves. And I'm glad that it was put in there because it makes his character just a little more memorable.
The depth of this villain is who was the villain in that one Marvel movie? Because other than Thanos, I can't remember any of their names.
All right.
Anyways,
all that to say, Steppenwolf was amazing.
Steppenwolf is one of the reasons why this gets a 5 out of 5 for me because very rarely have villains been both terrifying and relatable.
Yeah. So anyway, moving on, we have music and sound next. Mine was a 4 out of 5. I'll keep mine short and simple here because it comes down to one thing, and it's not even like an awful thing. And it's nothing against the Junkie XL who composed this. I can't remember who the other guy was, but Junkie XL was the main guy here. So
it was all Junkie XL.
It was all Junkie XL. Okay, yes. Maybe it was. Yeah, I did.
Because Danny Elfman was brought in to replace him on the theatrical cut. Yes,
he was brought in for. So yeah, Danny Elfman did the original score. And he pandered
to the studio.
Yeah, and I'm not even gonna get into it. I enjoy some Danny Elfman. That's all I'm gonna say. Original Batman scores. I'm here for it. Anyway,
that was the only nod from that movie that I enjoyed.
Okay, that's fair. So anyway, Junkie XL was the main composer on here. Hans Zimmer did not come back for this one. No. I'm sure there was some scheduling conflicts. I think was the main reason.
After Man of Steel, he said he was pretty much done.
Okay, so maybe it was that. I couldn't remember for sure.
Yeah, it was superhero films. Because critically, the Man of Steel soundtrack was like rejected.
I hate that.
It did not do well. It's fantastic.
It's beautiful.
In hindsight, I think it's considered one of the best superhero soundtracks. And
it is Superman's theme.
Yes.
I will die on that hill. It's better than the original. There you go. Come at me with your pitchforks. Anyway, it's a 4 out of 5 mainly because I miss Hans Zimmer. He's my favorite composer of all time. I'm not even huge into like composers and like their music.
But you know when it's a Hans Zimmer.
I have Hans Zimmer music on my playlist that I will just throw on because I love it.
Yes.
Like it is just, and it's just
Pirates of the Caribbean soundtracks are just.
It's
Anyways, this isn't a podcast about Hans Zimmer.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm getting way. Like I said, this can be easy to get off track. I'm going to try again, concise. Junkie XL does a phenomenal job. Specifically towards the end, the end scores for the ending of this movie are beautiful and very, very well executed. But you can definitely tell throughout most of the movie, leading up to that point, it doesn't quite have the Hans Zimmer epicness until that end. Like. And Junkie XL does phenomenal work. He was on Batman vs Superman as well, and he does a phenomenal job with Hans Zimmer there. For me, it's just I kind of miss the Hans Zimmer a little bit, but Junkie XL still has some absolutely memorable songs on this that I remember and still have on my playlist. Towards some of the end songs that are really well done. Sound design is phenomenal. It's really well executed.
It's crunchy.
It's crunchy. It's you
great.
Feel every hit, every blast. Every explosion, and I just
the
love
sound of the boom tubes to transport. It's one of the
boom.
One of the coolest sounds.
It's a really good sound.
It's up there with Transformers and sound effects. That's the only good thing about the Transformers movies. They sound amazing.
So yeah, my main complaint that's a 4 out of 5 is just I miss Hans Zimmer, and it's really not a huge knock because Junkie XL did phenomenal. So 4 out of 5.
Yes, I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. Really not too different in that like. Fair. So some of the cool parts about this, Junkie XL, I think he had 6 months to compose this.
He didn't have a lot of time.
Like he had it done. Joss Whedon came in and said, "That's garbage. I want Danny Elfman." Joss Whedon was basically hated on every aspect of this movie, from what everybody has said. So Junkie XL was kicked off. What he had been working on was done. Then later, when it was announced that HBO was going to release it, he got a call from Zach, and Zach was basically like, dude, do what you want and go as hard as you want. And I think he did, because he talks about like the reason I have to go a little bit up on 4 and 5. He did recycle the Hans Zimmer themes, which is fine.
Yeah, because they're great.
Many composers have used other composers' themes, Star Wars, for example.
Oh yeah, totally.
But the Superman themes are fantastic. He modifies the Wonder Woman theme a little bit.
Oh, sorry. That was another reason it was 4 out of 5. I do not want to ever hear Wonder Woman's theme from Justice League ever again. Sorry.
Which Justice? Zack Snyder's?
Zack Snyder's, yeah. I do not want to hear that anymore. I'm sick of hearing that song.
So I appreciate what he did, whether I didn't like it necessarily or
it was
not.
good for the first couple times they did it.
Yeah, because he definitely pulls on like historical chanting and singing.
Yeah.
Which was his influence with that.
Time.
I think it's cool. I think it's a nice nod. I don't like how it sounds, but he does keep the electric violin and viola sound from the Man of Steel, which is just awesome Wonder Woman theme.
It does. Her theme is awesome.
That is an awesome Wonder Woman theme. And in this movie, he hits all those themes. Like Wonder Woman has that electric violin.
That's a violin.
Yeah, that's an electric violin. I was reading about it.
Oh, interesting.
He composed it during COVID and outsourced all of his strings and stuff to a local place.
Oh, cool.
Then Aquaman has like this guitar theme that's pretty good. The only thing, like Batman doesn't really have a theme.
Yeah, and that's okay.
But it wasn't
a huge deal.
The thing that almost made his score perfect for me is Flash's music.
We'll get into that.
I don't even know how to describe Flash's music. Reminds me of like if you were to take the sound of glass, like tinkling onto the ground, like shattered glass, and then like electrifying that and turning it into like, I don't know how to describe the beauty that is Flash's name.
All right, so moving on. This one's interesting, just given the circumstances of which the movie was created, because they're using old footage and then some new stuff. So editing and effects, mine's a 4 out of 5.
Mine is also a 4 out of 5.
Okay, I can kick off, and I don't even see. It feels weird because at times I feel like I'm being generous, and I'm also giving too much credit with this because
I would agree. I think I'm being overly generous because it's what I wanted to see.
Yeah, but it's like you can tell that this movie was using old footage and it was like using some new stuff because he obviously is only going to have a limited budget for what new shoots he can make with it. And the CGI at times is absolutely questionable, specifically with some of the Cyborg scenes with his backstory.
Well, there's also a couple scenes like it's Cyborg's face or Wonder Woman's face like superimposed on.
Yeah, exactly. So
there's a couple moments.
I don't really have much to say about it. I think it is, for what it is, again, using old footage and some new stuff thrown in there. And this was during COVID too. So like they're doing a lot of this from home. For what it is, I'm probably being very generous. It's a 4 out of 5. I think it looks beautiful. The color scheme that they changed from the old one.
You mean the black and white color scheme?
Yeah, the black and white from the ugly, disgusting, like tangerine, orange, red. That
the
we got.
Orange sky.
I don't want to talk about it. I'm getting angry. Anyway, I think I'll just keep it 4 out of 5. I'm probably being a little too generous because there are questionable CGI moments, but I think overall, for what it was, it really looks beautiful. The editing is really well done.
I don't think you're being too generous. I probably think it's accurate because it's not a 5 out of 5. It's not a perfect CGI. It's over reliant on CGI, as Zack Snyder tends to be.
Oh yeah,
so
absolutely.
You can deduct for that.
Yeah,
but it looks better than anything another certain studio has released since their
starting to see a trend with Tim here.
Since their big end game movie.
And even the end, like the editing and the color scheme is just off-putting to say the least.
Yeah. So like the special effects in this movie, they're not groundbreaking. Yeah. They work in where they're at. They do the job. There's a couple rough shots, but I'd say it's overall 4 out of 5. Yep. The Flash's slow motion scenes, and I know Zach gets some flack for it. I'm not talking about slow motion in general. I'm talking about the Flash's Speed Force scenes. I think are pretty, like, that is hard to execute on screen, and they did a nice job with that.
I was gonna bring that up too, because upon rewatching, it bugged me more this time than it has in the past, because I can absolutely understand the complaints of like, who runs like that? But also I'm thinking of like, do I want him to run like he does in the CW? Like just frantic like arm movements and it's like super stiff. It's like, I'll enjoy the happy medium of what I got until we see something.
Well, his arm movements have nothing to do with the CGI.
Yeah. So anyway, moving on to script, I believe. What you got?
I actually, in hindsight, I might change this a little bit, but I gave it a 5 out of 5, mainly for the attention to detail that this movie has.
Oh, totally.
Not just for the story within itself, but the story going back to Batman vs. Superman.
Yeah.
The story
just all the
threads that are picked up.
Anyone out there who says that Zack Snyder did not have a vision, Zack Snyder had the vision. WB just didn't like his vision, but they didn't have a plan either.
Right. They had no plan. He did.
If you watch these 3 movies, there are connections. Like, I'm not saying it's perfect. It's not perfect. But to argue the fact that he did not connect these movies seamlessly, you literally could watch these movies as one giant movie and it flows like one movie.
Yeah.
Anyway, continue. Sorry.
No, and that's, no, you're correct. And that's why I have to give it a 5 out of 5. There are the humor in this movie, especially, we heard
way better balance.
We heard from press over and over that Zack Snyder's movies were soulless and unfunny and blah, blah, blah.
I'm sick of hearing
and
that.
I hate that because you're comparing the Boy Scout of Superman to the grim, dark Batman who aren't funny.
Yeah. These movies weren't supposed to be funny.
That's not supposed to be funny.
And yet it still has some funny moments.
Unlike Guardians of the Galaxy, where we throw every single character some humor.
Guardians of the Galaxy was the downfall of Marvel.
The first one was amazing. The second one was...
I like the second one, actually.
What?
Anyway, keep going.
Anyways, but then the second movie, the script actually puts humor in appropriate scenes with the appropriate characters. The humor
Is
fits
balanced.
the personality.
Exactly.
It mostly comes from the Flash because the Flash has traditionally been the humorous character.
Yeah, the wisecracking character.
His interactions with Aquaman scenes are quite funny. His interactions with Wonder Woman, like when do you think she's into younger women? And then Cyborg's like, she's 5,000 years old. Everybody's younger. Like, it's funny and it works.
It fits his character, and the fact that the other characters react how they would still react as personalities to his like jokes. Like I always think about the scene at the end where they're talking about their plan. And they're like, and Barry say your plan one more time. He's like, with the power of love. And then Cyborg's like, Barry. It's like, that fits perfectly with their characters. And then he goes into like what his actual plan is. Like, it feels well placed and it doesn't compromise like Marvel does with their jokes.
Yeah.
Not to draw all the comparisons to Marvel.
My biggest issue with a lot of the recent Marvel films have been like, Guardians of the Galaxy was super successful, but now every movie has to be hilarious.
Right.
And that's not true.
Yeah.
So,
exactly.
And not everybody needs to have a joke.
Yep.
But outside of that, like, I think the script really does a great job of balancing those moments, balancing those interactions. There are some cheesy lines, but again, we're watching a comic book movie.
Yeah, you have to give some breathing room there. So mine was a 4 out of 5, and kind of like you said, I feel like 4 out of 5 is more comfortable where I would sit with that.
Yeah. I'm
not going to beat the dead horse. You kind of nailed everything that I was talking about. I will point out the one flaw of this movie that it's the one script part. that was weird. The one part of the script that I keep coming back to of like, that was weird still, is how Darkseid just somehow forgets that Earth had the anti-life equation. Because it makes it pretty clear that he knew it was there, if I'm not mistaken, and somehow he forgets it and Steppenwolf like finds it, apparently. Like, I still think that is the biggest flaw of this movie. That part there just...
So that is an interesting point, but I have always taken it as that Darkseid was conquering so many worlds at that time.
And that's what I kind of lean into, is like, well, maybe he's just kind of... Maybe this is just sport for him, and he's not like actually keeping track, and like they just don't have it.
They refer to it as the primitive planet, which means that like the technology was way behind what Darkseid was after.
Probably, yeah.
And so he probably didn't know that was its name.
I just want to point it out because everyone talks about that part, and it's been brought up before. So, but outside of that, like you said, the script for everyone...
Is that going to suck the enjoyment out of the movie?
No, not even close.
Only if you're a terrible person.
So outside of that, the script is pretty well done. There's some cheesy lines in there. I get kind of tired of Wonder Woman's lines a little bit, but
I love Wonder Woman.
Oh my God, shut up. But yeah, I think the script, 4 out of 5, it fits very well with the movie.
So the acting is where I actually docked it half a point.
Okay.
What'd you give it? I give it a 4.5.
I give it a 4.
I give it a 4.5 because I think we have our best on-screen Superman of all time.
Amen to that, brother.
I truly do. I think we have it's going to be hard to follow up Gal Gadot in Wonder Woman's shoes. I think...
Let's talk about Ben Affleck, baby.
I was getting there.
Batfleck.
And I know many people dislike Batfleck because they dislike the movies. But you take him out of the movies. If we're going to just ignore the script, he is the best on-screen Batman we have had ever.
Preach it, brother.
Right? So not only from the fabric costume that is far more comic book accurate and beautiful.
It's so good to look at.
He is physically imposing.
Yep, exactly.
But also agile. The scene in Batman vs Superman where he uses those gadgets at the end of that,
of all time,
best Batman fight scene ever. But also just like the dark and brooding, but he is the balance of Bruce Wayne and Batman better than anybody has ever been.
Yeah.
Christian Bale.
For the story, let's give credit to the story and like he was put into also, and the script he was given.
Christian Bale was a great Bruce Wayne.
He was the perfect Bruce Wayne, I would argue. But you got to contrast the stories. They're two very different Bruce Waynes at the same time. So they both did an amazing job.
His Batman did leave a little something to be desired. He was, I almost refer to it, he was like the James Bond version of Batman.
Yeah, that's fair.
It was very gadgety, very high tech, very
the fight scenes kind of lack a little bit too.
Yeah, the fight scenes are rough.
Yeah.
The climax of The Dark Knight is still a sore spot with me, even though the rest of that movie is
it's way better than I think people give it credit for.
But
anyway, acting.
The acting is honestly, Ben Affleck as Batman seals the deal for this movie for me.
Yep.
Because Batman is always the like understated leader. Clark knows he's not quite the strategist of Batman.
Yeah.
And none of the others would be there without him. And this movie and Ben Affleck really lay into that, like, he is not the powerhouse. He is the brains behind it. And there's just a subtle performance from Ben that, like, he's doing this on faith. He talks about that, like, for the first time in his life.
This is the conclusion to his character arc of him redeeming himself as Batman.
Yes.
Which has been the point from the beginning of Batman versus Superman.
Yep. Ben does an incredible job. He redeemed himself from Daredevil, which is what everybody was worried about.
Please don't bring that. Yeah. Anyway, I completely agree with you. I'm going to just rapid fire this one. Ready? Okay. Batfleck, absolutely amazing. I have nothing really more to add of what you said. I agree. Henry Cavill, Superman, perfect Superman. I don't care what anyone says.
Some of the side characters are why I deducted.
Oh, no, that's totally fine. Yeah. Yep. Wonder Woman, I'm actually the different here. I think she absolutely looks and feels the Wonder Woman. Gal Gadot leaves a lot to be desired in the acting department, but whatever. No, I'm totally with you there. She looks and feels it. I just could really use better acting. As long as the script supports her, I think she's fine. Ray Fisher as Cyborg is pretty awesome. I love his character in this movie.
He really does dark and brooding.
Yeah,
almost better than Batman.
Yeah, he's kind of a little bit more of the edgy teenager, which makes sense in this context of the movie. I think he does a phenomenal job with it, and he really nails like the emotional tension that he struggles with in this movie. Flash, as much as I don't care for Ezra Miller as a human being, he does a phenomenal job as the Flash. He brings that character to life, and it's my favorite version of the Flash personally. I know a lot of people love the CW Flash.
I do love Grant Gustin.
Yeah, I know he's pretty great.
The writing for that show is all over the place, but Grant is pretty fantastic.
You know what? Bring Grant into the next DC movie.
That's what everybody said.
So anyway, main characters all great. Side characters are a little more forgettable. Although I would love to see more J.K. Simmons as Gordon.
J.K. Simmons as Gordon is a true like highlight of this movie. He's fantastic.
So anyway, that wraps up the acting section.
Direction.
Ooh.
This is the biggest contention for this film.
What'd you give it?
5.
Pause for effect.
I give it a 5.
I give it a 4.
So the biggest contention for this film is not between us. The biggest contention for this film is with the rest of the world.
Yes. And the 4-hour runtime.
I truly think that this comes down to if you like this movie is if you like Zack Snyder's style or not.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Which that's always been the case with Zack Snyder.
And I am from the breed that like I was in high school when 300 hit theaters.
Classic.
And 300 like blew up the high school. Everybody was talking about 300. We loved it. And Zack really hasn't changed his formula much.
It's pretty much been the same.
And I have to give Zack credit for sticking to what Zack does. Like Zack is an artist. He has a vision and he follows through.
Yeah.
You don't have to like that vision.
Right. And that's totally fine. And to go off your point there, and again, like I know there's stuff we talk about on here that with this movie specifically that, you know, it's like frustrating. But what I see more than ever are more people hating on this movie talking than people who love this movie talking. I've seen way more people talk about hating this movie than I've seen people talking about love, but I think it goes
most of it goes back to Zack.
Yeah. I don't understand the hate for this man. I get not liking his movies, but
he uses too much slow-mo.
Yeah, I get it.
His movies are dark.
Yes, it's so depressing until you look past the fact
they're too serious.
It's just it gets kind of old after a while because it's just the same repeated criticisms of him. But then you look at Man of Steel, and it's like, oh, it's too dark and depressing. It's like, yeah, but Superman comes out at the end of the day, still the Boy Scout who chooses to do the right thing in a world that treats him like crap, and that's a continued story in Batman versus Superman, even into Justice League.
It's so hopeful.
It's so hopeful. How do you miss that just because the colors are a little darker than Marvel?
Yes. And that is like Honestly, there are other superhero movies out in the world right now that you could just swap the names of the directors and the movie would not change.
Yeah. How about we talk about the Batman? Like, you're telling me that that's not darker than Zack Snyder's, and people think it's the greatest Batman movie ever
people
made?
Think it's the greatest ever made.
Baloney.
But it is just as dark as anything Zack Snyder did.
It's darker, I
have to fault Zack on storytelling. He struggles sometimes with his storytelling.
Absolutely.
But I gave this movie a 5 out of 5 because, quite frankly, this movie is stunning in many, many moments, more than a lot of the other superhero movies I've seen.
Yeah.
So I actually watched it recently, and there's the Justice is Gray version. And if you want to see movie as an art, watch this movie as Justice is Gray, because it is beautiful. It shows why his movies are dark, because the lighting is something that he uses to convey his story.
Absolutely.
It's bright when it needs to be. It's dark when it needs to be. Yeah, it's a little heavy on the dark, but that's his style. That's his signature.
And if you like that,
that's his fingerprints.
An even better movie with that style of gray and black in Logan, because that was also
Logan is also great,
perfect
in black and white.
Anyway,
like those are two movies that I'm like, watching these in black and white shows the artistry in what the director was trying to achieve. Like it is a beautiful to look at movie. From the moments when Superman puts his suit back on, stunning imagery.
Every shot, like you say, could be the part of a comic book.
Yes.
Like, every shot feels like you're literally watching a comic book live.
You pause it at any moment and it looks like a staged photograph. Like there's so much thought behind it that, like, yeah, I understand the complaint about too much slow motion.
Oh no, it's
and do I get
criticism.
It's a fair criticism.
This one.
There's a lot. However, I don't agree with the complaint of slow motion when you're talking about a Speed Force character.
Okay, that's different though.
I'm sure that is different, but that is part of it. Like, there are scenes like with a gun shell, like slow-mo pops out. Like, that's not necessary. I agree with you on that.
Especially the opening scene with Wonder Woman and the guys, just every single shot he takes and reloading is all, it's like, okay, this is
it drags on. Zack likes his slow-mo.
Yeah, and that's fine. I'm whatever.
That's his thing. And you don't have to like it.
But at least he does, like, he sticks to his guns.
He's consistent. He's been doing that for almost 20 years.
You know
now.
what you're getting into.
You know what you're getting into. So why get into it and then rake him over the coals for it?
Yeah. So mine was 4 out of 5. You hit everything basically. I'll still point back to, it's a 4-hour movie that does not feel like 4 hours. The direction is very concise. It's very straightforward. I have really no complaints about how he went about the direction of this movie. I think the story just doesn't have a lot of missed beats. It does not feel like a 4-hour movie when you sit down and watch the whole thing, if you watch it all the way through. And I mean, that's a lot I can say compared to other movies where, like, even at 2 hours, it's like, man, this movie is just dragging out.
Yes.
This movie does not drag at any point. Maybe coming back and rewatching it, the first half drags.
If you're scrolling Instagram during this movie, you're gonna think it's dragging.
Yeah,
but
again, like, rewatching it, the first half might drag a little bit because you know the characters already. But again, I
love the characters, so I don't mind spending that time with them.
Yeah, exactly. So 4 out of 5. Next on the list is,
I believe we're at It Factor now.
It Factor. So I'll start. Mine was a 4 out of 5.
Okay.
Were you gonna say something?
Yeah, I don't know how that's a 4 out of 5.
Okay.
This is clearly a 5 out of 5 because, as far as I know, for the history of recorded time, it is the only movie that has been brought into existence by fandom on
if
social
you're taking
media.
that into context, then yes,
that is the It Factor to this movie.
I was simply just, okay, fair. I'll give you that one. You can take
like
that one.
To me, that is like, there is no other movie that has had this kind of hype and press, and nothing about this movie was traditionally brought about.
Yeah, I completely agree with that.
That's where this gets 5 out of 5 for me, because even if you hated everything about this movie, the It Factor of what this movie is and what it represents is totally unique.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I gave it 4 out of 5. I wasn't really considering that part of it, so I mean, I think you could absolutely argue 5 out of 5 for that. I was more just judging it for the movie that it was, and that I mean, if you take in consideration when it would have been released, I mean, Infinity War hasn't come out yet. I think Civil War might be the movie, one of the more recent movies. I mean, you can check.
Are we talking initial release?
Like
or
if Justice
theatrical?
League was to have released originally where Whedon's was released, if it was this
I believe
movie,
it came out in 2017.
I'm pretty sure it was before Infinity War even happened.
Oh, yes.
And so, again, 4-hour epic, seeing the Justice League on screen, and like you were saying, just how this movie came about. There's a lot that this movie just stands out to other movies. I'm not saying it's going to be one of the greats of all time or anything like that, but you cannot. I feel like you can't really.
This came out.
I don't know if you can talk about movie history without bringing up like this era of movies where.
So the theatrical of this came out same year as Logan, same year as Ragnarok, same year as Guardians Volume 2.
Yeah, it was like early on. Like he did a lot of stuff in this movie that really wasn't treaded on yet. Like
no,
the whole ending with the Flash and them losing.
That's another. I'll get to that.
We'll get to that because we're
so anyway, we talked about
4 out of 5
enjoyment.
Yeah, let's go to enjoyment and get our final score here. What was your enjoyment?
My enjoyment was 10 out of 10.
Mine was actually surprisingly 9 out of 10.
Okay.
Because again, like again, the kind of drug a little bit at times, but I still really like. This is my 6th time maybe watching this movie, and I still really enjoyed myself, bringing my score to a total of 41 out of 50.
I gave it a 48 out of 50, which is
totally understandable.
Almost as close to perfect as you can get. I think the only movie I've scored higher than that is Psycho, but I've scored many at 48.
Yes, you have.
You just mentioned what scene were you talking about?
The entire ending where they lose, and
that's it, losing.
Yes.
The losing was a big part to me because on a rewatch, as I was putting together that, like, they made it clear throughout this movie that every single character was vital to success.
Yes. No one was left out of this movie as a main character.
Because until all of them are together, they lose. They lose.
Yes.
And then when every one of them is together, they still lose.
Even with the strongest man in the universe, whom the mother box has never woke for,
who comes back in glorious fashion.
Oh, wait, just take a moment. Ready? And wait.
Not impressed.
Oh,
so good.
Baby.
So good. Okay.
Oh, so good.
But they're losing. And this is like, I could almost wrap up the entire crux of why this movie is so significant in this scene that it starts with Cyborg and Aquaman one on two with Steppenwolf. And they're just ready to go. They don't know where anyone else is at. They're ready to take on this guy who previously kicked their butts.
Yep, exactly.
They're not flinching. They're like,
hey, remember me?
Let's go. And then all of a sudden Wonder Woman drops in. Okay? And Steppenwolf immediately antagonizes her and calls to her significance and why she's different than the other Amazons.
Exactly.
But second, just pisses her off. Because she drops in and he goes, where were you when I murdered your sisters? You could have saved them.
All of this accompanied by a phenomenal score by Junkie XL. Oh, is it da 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 da? Oh my gosh, it's so pretty.
But that gives me chills.
The dread that you feel from that score, along with him just beating the crap out of your heroes, and just it's like you're so close.
They're putting up a good fight.
Oh,
they're doing it.
And
they're putting up a good fight.
But even then, it's just like, oh, they're still gonna lose.
Yep. And meanwhile, the Batman and the Flash are off working to set up. The Flash has to reach a speed so he can charge to hit the mother boxes at the right time so that they can separate them and prevent Darkseid from coming.
Right. And then that's when Superman comes in. It's
Steppenwolf is beating the crap out of them. They're defeated.
Coming in with the Superman anthem, and it's just like glorious. And it's so awesome.
But here's the thing.
Yep, keep going.
Here's the thing. The Flash gets hurt. And they lose.
And like the music just cuts out, and it's like you just feel the life leaving your body. I'm sorry that we're talking about this, but I feel like
no, but this moment to me encapsulates why this movie stands different
from every other
And
superhero
why it's so
movie.
epic. Yes.
Yeah, the only one that can even be compared to Infinity War, which again, the ending is the same way. It is just a shock
Yes.
that you're left in.
So, and the ultimate thing here is like the Flash gets hurt and he was their key in that moment to succeeding. And so they hit and Cyborg goes, it's too late.
Yeah, and then you hear the violins coming in with the horns, and then boom.
The world is literally exploding in slow motion Zack Snyder fashion.
And then guess what happens? Again, flawlessly executed. It goes silence, and then a wow, and it's just, oh my gosh, people are gonna hate us for this.
So then this is the moment when like Flash is hurt. It shows us he has accelerated healing abilities. He enters the Speed Force, and he literally runs back in time as the world is exploding around him.
The first time we've ever seen something. What?
Oh,
no, I'm talking about the Flash.
He did run back in time earlier in the movie, but
I guess but this is like the scale
major,
of which.
Yes,
like, we've never seen.
He
that.
literally runs back in time, and you watch Superman's muscles like be put back on his body and his skin reform, and it's disgusting, and it shows like the incredibleness of this. And Flash is running back in time, and then he hits charge, and then when all of them are united in that moment, are they successful?
It's just the execution of that entire section and ending.
It's worth watching the movie for.
It's just worth getting to that point, and like you said. It's hard for you and me to not get to that part and just go.
I want to go watch it again.
I know, like it's hard to not talk in detail.
I just watched it.
I'm sure this is one of those moments where we ramble too much, but it's like that moment just solidified what felt like I just witnessed something incredible in superhero movies, at least.
Yes,
and not just superhero, but like culturally speaking, this movie was not supposed to happen, and the fact that we got to see it. And the way we came about seeing it is just
the significance of the character arc that comes full circle in that when the Flash is running back in time and he speaks to his dad and he has a gut-wrenching line of like, you told me to be somebody and I just want you to know I was one of them.
Yep, exactly.
Like, so it's incredible.
Anyway, that's over. We should probably stop there.
But then
all that to say that
my final thoughts on this, like we've already kind of given the final thoughts. But like the thing that is still staggering about this movie is that they lost in the end. Because Cyborg has that vision of reawakening Superman and how that's eventually going to lead to Darkseid's victory.
Yep.
And that's where we end the movie. Like,
yep. And before we close, I do genuinely feel sad when I watch this movie because I just want to know how it ends. I want to see the finale of this because I'm one of the fans who is. These movies are definitely near and dear to my heart, and it's just a shame knowing that more than likely we will not get to see the end of this story,
especially with James Gunn now. And
and I'm sad about it, and I'm okay with it. I'm at peace with it.
I respect James. What he did with Suicide Squad and Peacemaker were fantastic.
But, I mean, that's Justice League. I mean, I feel like we contained that.
We probably lost a whole lot of viewers and fans right there.
Whatever.
Hey, Snyderverse people, hit that follow button, hit that like.
Hashtag restore the Snyderverse. Just kidding, don't.
Because
it's okay.
I can admit, I think the Snyder cut of Justice League is the Lord of the Rings of superheroes movies. I might have at one time said Endgame was.
No.
But rewatching it is a snooze fest until the final act.
Yeah. So.
And then Infinity War is still fantastic.
Oh, yeah. No, it's
Infinity
great.
War is still up there.
Totally.
But like, this is epic on another level.
Yeah. So, I'm sure we talked everyone's ear off at this point going through that finale. And again, I still think we contained that pretty well for 4 hours of content into 1 hour.
Reduced it down to 1 hour.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, yeah, it's great. I think for this movie, I think this movie could be a social setting. I think you could enjoy it alone. Again, I think you need to understand what you're getting into because it's Zack Snyder, because it's a superhero movie. You know the context behind it. We don't have to like warn you about anything. You know what you're getting into. As long as you know that, just understand that's what you're getting into.
Yep.
And you can probably watch this in almost any setting if you really wanted to.
So our average official score that was released in 21.
Yeah.
We actually had 5 reviewers with us. We scored a variety. We had 48, 47, 38, 31 just not on board, and that's why we're here. And then 44, which brought our total average viewing to 41.6, which leaves it in the amazing category. So that's why we're here. 31's pretty low compared to everyone else's.
We had a lot of scores for that one.
Send us your scores.
If you have, whether you've seen it in the past or you rewatched it recently, like just let us know what you thought about it. Maybe we'll read some of those comments. Again, you know what you're getting into. We don't feel like there's a lot of warning to be put on this movie. You know what you're getting into with it. So I feel good about that. I feel like I'm ready to go watch it again. And here we go. Well, with all that being said, thank you once again for listening to another episode of the Average Podcast. I almost said podcast.
We'll see you again next time.
And go to Linktree.
That's not Linktree. Goes in our bio, Bryce.
Oh well, I'm still telling the word to go.
Go to the Average Reviews on Instagram. Find us. Click our Linktree. That'll take you through to YouTube, Rumble, Spotify.
Check the bios. You'll
like and follow us there. The more you like, the more you subscribe. You leave us a 5-star review. It makes it easier for others to find us because that's the biggest problem right now. We're at the bottom of the search, and it's like a 3-day search if you're just scrolling. So
that's true. Also, send us movies you want us to watch and review. We'd love to do that and interact with you guys in the movies that you love and hate. I say that because
I want to get to a movie we hate next.
We'll get there. Trust me. We'll get there.
Well, I want to get to one that's bad. Like, we need to do a bad movie. I got plenty of 80s movies that I'll bring us.
Let's put it on a schedule. Because we have some movies lined up right now. But, I mean, come the next, let's say 5
We're looking at March. So
yeah, March should be fair.
Okay.
So with all that said, thank you for listening.
Thanks for joining us.
And we'll see you in the next episode.
See ya.